preview features and plus another general availability feature that makes Windows Cloud unique. So first of all, let me introduce about myself. My name is Janaka Rangama, and currently I work for a company called Asset Software. And I've been in the industry for several years, and I do deployments, and I have some specialization on Hyper-V plus open source platform as well. So other than that, I do a blog. That's it. That's about me. For people who don't know me. And let's quickly move into the agenda. Now today's agenda is going to be rebranding the cloud, Microsoft Azure. You may recall that it was previously Windows Azure. So Microsoft has renamed the product itself, nothing else, and the look and feel is same. And we are going to highlight on some key concepts. We're going to do a refresh on the key concepts we have on Azure, and then we are going to look about the new look. That means Windows Azure portal, the new portal that is focused on DevOps. You may have, there are another two features that I want to highlight, that is Windows Azure Remote App and Windows Azure Express Route. So those are the things I'm going to discuss today. And rebranding the cloud, Microsoft Azure. So first of all, let's see why we should consider the cloud. Now, when we think about the traditional infrastructure, you may say, hey, now I'm going to deploy a server farm for SharePoint. I'm going to deploy a CRM installation, stuff like that. Now, the problems we face as IT admins is we are quickly running out of space, quickly running out of computing power. Whereas we have computing power and storage, but we are not using it. ROI is less, stuff like that. Now, in the cloud space, speed. Now, when we think about speed, the time taken to provision a machine, to set up a server, install Windows Server, and put the Active Directory on it, the time taken to provision the infrastructure. If you do it in a manual way, that means even you run script, even you do it on automated installation, it's somewhat time consuming. But if you take Windows Azure for a cloud installation, when you provision a virtual machine, you are getting everything, basically not everything. You don't have to worry about the underlying operating system. And if you have a faster internet connection in your data center and whatnot, you may notice that when you connect it into your applications, whatever the applications you are hosting on your existing infrastructure, it depends on your speed. But if you have that in cloud, actually the internal data connectivity speed in the cloud is much faster. And how about scale? How scalable your deployments are? When you take a traditional deployment, now when you need more computing power, what do? If you are running out of hardware for virtual machines or whatnot you want to configure, you have to purchase hardware. Now, when you have to set up again and edit to your existing cluster or whatever the setup you have. But here, in cloud, you can scale as you want. Say, if you are running a web service, if you can configure it to scale out, depending on the demand you have. If you are, say, you are running a video production site or a streaming site, you can scale that site according to your requirement. So you can say, hey, if this one number of hits comes up, scale this site up to this number of hardware, stuff like that. And economics. Again, when you invest on physical hardware, your initial cost would be high. But if you take up the cloud, now we have at Microsoft, Windows Azure has something called pay as you go. You get a subscription by NPU credit card. You don't have to pay a buck if you are not using the service. If your virtual machine is down, you don't have to. If you have shut it down, you don't have to pay. And you are paying hourly. On why we should use cloud for this specific scenario. This is just a basic introduction for those people who doesn't know about Windows Azure, and I'm going to jump into some advanced features, the preview features in the later slides. Now, cloud patterns. You may know on and off. On and off means now you have several several requirements like that. Now in a quarter end, you get a requirement. Hey, we need this computing power. We are getting a project on these months. Now, on and off, you have to provision infrastructure, but you are not using it on the long run. And in that case, you may over-provision your storage, and the time to market can be cumbersome. That's a problem. On that pattern, say on and off pattern, there's an inactivity period on your infrastructure. You may provision a virtual machine and you won't use it in the next 3 months, but you will use it after the next 3 months. So in that case, we have, if you take that scenario to Microsoft Cloud, you can have on-demand development test lab environment. That means you can provision your virtual machines, keep them shut down, and when you want to use that, you can start up and use it. You won't be billed unless you use the computer. And you can have call VMs for DR, disaster recovery, and that job workloads. Now, each of these lines are problems we are having, and in the transition you are seeing is, the corresponding solution we have with the cloud. So there are some rapid growing workloads. Say now you are admin for a multimedia website like NBC.com. So when Olympics comes, your video streaming and everything would be high. You have to dedicate your infrastructure according to the requirement. So it's growing fast. You can't say now when this project gets finished. You can't say, yeah, I have provisioned this much of virtual machines and all according to the requirement, because the requirement would be still there. Your management say we need this number of virtual machines, we need this much of storage, but actually the project is overgrowing, so you can't actually predefine the storage cost. Sorry, the infrastructure cost you have to bear. So in that case, actually, if you take a web service or a website or a streaming site or stuff like that, it needs to be, smoothly scale out and scale in according to the requirement. So, in that case, you can do it on Windows Azure. You can scale out your infrastructure. Even you can have your backups and storage integrated to cloud. That's another. And there's another pattern called unpredictable demand. Now, if you take a website, you are designing it for your local customers. That website is going well for a couple of months, and suddenly you will get a burst. Some people from another countries are visiting that website, they are requesting information, and again after a month or so, it goes on the normal run. So that's unpredictable. It's going on a steady rate, but in the meantime, it gets unpredictable demand. So you can't actually say now my peak time would be this, my off peak would be this, stuff like that. For that, you can use Microsoft Cloud. Now, considering these scenarios, and the last scenario is predictable bursting, that means you know the workflow you are working on. You know that this month, at this point of time, you need this much of infrastructure. You need this number of virtual machines for the developers. You need this much of virtual machines for people like who are doing these test automation, QA guys. You can predict the workflow that you've been assigned. So in that case, you can predefine the structure, and you can plan how do I deploy this on the cloud. And again, there's a higher chance for over provisioning the capacity and the infrastructure, and there's a high chance. Now you know that at this month for this project this is going to be the requirement, but when the client comes and say, hey, I need this feature specifically running on a SSD, or this should be this database should have this number of IOPS. Some customers are like that. If you take the financial sector, they are very much concerned about the IOPS. That means they don't know about IOPS, but they are very much concerned about the performance. In that case, if you have provision with your your internal infrastructure according to the requirement you get, but suddenly if they are going to ask you now, hey, I need this to be done within this number of minutes. In that case, there's a sudden burst. For that, also you can use Microsoft Cloud. Now, in my point of view, where I am working, we are running a product on our data center. Now, if we take the same product and if we put it to the cloud, that's actually a line of business application. According to the requirement of the client, and say we are getting more clients these days. So, if we take our current infrastructure, we can't handle that. If you are on the cloud, if you are fully on the cloud, or if you are on a hybrid deployment, I can have some of my clients on the cloud, same application, right? But say now my data center in Massachusetts, so I can have the local clients on my on-premise infrastructure, and I can have my remote clients to go through the public cloud. Thinking about the scale, how scalable? What's Microsoft footprint? We have data centers in more than 90 locations, more than 90 countries, and I have to say we don't have to worry about the downtime, right? Because if you take the Office 365 or stuff like that, or CRM Online, the availability is very much high. Now, some can say that is not true, but in this day and going on the current trend, people are more moving towards cloud, but they don't abandon their existing infrastructure. They keep them, they utilize them, and they move whatever additional workload. That's what I'm suggesting. Additional workload or the demanding workload to the cloud if you can't really afford the infrastructure. So these are some locations we have data centers at Microsoft, and these are some territories and countries currently Microsoft Azure is offering the services. And this is just an overview of how does a Microsoft data center looks like. See, it's called the IT pack, IT pre-assembled components. Now this is just not a single standalone server. There are more than 100-200 servers inside this container. So containers like this makes a data center. And if you take the power efficiency, I haven't included that in this one. It's much better than running your own data center, because Microsoft data centers are governed according to the standard regulations. So actually, if you take now, say if you're a small company and your complete infrastructure, complete applications are in the cloud, you don't have to worry about the getting an AC for your data center and all. Now, say only your domain controller DNS and your gateway is running on your local office. That's enough, right? Actually, if you take Windows Azure, there are about 4 trillion objects in Windows Azure. So that's the scale we are talking about. So there are some links if you need to see how actually these data centers look like and how they work, what kind of cooling they use. Are those data centers EU compliant, stuff like that? You can see from those links. I'm sorry about the last month because I couldn't share the slide deck. End of today's session, this one and the last one I'm going to share as soon as possible. So you can get those links. And now we are looking at the cloud computing models. it's just a basic introduction. If you don't know anything about Microsoft Cloud or whatever cloud, public cloud, Amazon, whatever, just if you don't know any concept, follow through my slide deck and try to understand the basic concept. Now if you take cloud computing models, now here I have only talked about 3 key models. One is called infrastructure as a service, the other one is platform as a service, and the third one I'm going to explain you is software as a service. Now if you take infrastructure as a service, that means you are getting in actual infrastructure, physical infrastructure. That means storage, traffic management. These are some Azure terms. Traffic management, this stuff. You are getting VPN, virtual networks, the stuff, objects that actually matter for your physical infrastructure. That's going to be on cloud. So basically, infrastructure as a service means you are getting physical infrastructure, on some agreement from a service provider. So in that case, you are only managing the operating layer, operating systems, applications, that layer of the infrastructure. The servers, patching and everything, or underlying operating system, it's done through the provider. And the next one is platform as a service. If you take something like SQL in Azure, that means you can run your SQL databases in Windows Azure. That is called a platform as service. So in that case, the provider is responsible for the underlying hardware, operating system, plus the platform, that is SQL. So you can't go and you can add your SQL users, you can add system administrators, you can change your what we call those stuff, stored procedures, whatnot. But you can't actually change the platform because provider is handling that one. So you can have your workload in that one. You can use that platform to enhance your workload and work on that workload. But you are only responsible for the upper layers. That is again applications. And this is ideal for service-oriented blocks of applications. I will explain what do you mean by service-oriented. That means if you are running a BI application and if you are running a custom .NET application, that only means application part handled by you, but the database part, you have the database on the cloud. You don't have to worry about restarting the servers at all. You just need your database as a highly available solution. You can go for platform as well. And even Microsoft is in agreement with Oracle. You can host your Oracle databases on the cloud as well. That's an improvement. And when we talk about software as a service, this means you are getting platform and underlying infrastructure from the provider, and you can have your pre-packaged applications run on that resources. So if we take an example, your websites, your IIS running websites, you can move it in the cloud. And you don't have to worry about the underlying servers, operating systems, and whatnot you don't need to run for a website. You just have to worry about the website, the actual website. How do I design it? And in this case, you can scale it. Say if you are getting hits from Eastern Europe, you can scale out to that requirement. That kind of scalability is available with the cloud. Not only with Microsoft, other providers are also providing the same stuff. But specially, what I recommend is I'm working for a .NET based development company. If you are doing your development, your application on .NET, Microsoft Azure is the best one for you, because it's like basically how do you say? You are getting a 10,000 worth shoe from Nike, and coming out you are getting from the payment you are getting a cheap socks, right, and shorts. You can get the same stuff from the same provider, stuff like that. Because .NET and Windows Azure, they have an unbreakable bond. Now, as IT pros, we are talking only about the infrastructure. But today's trend, that is DevOps, it's more concerned toward the application. Now, I had recent chat with some software company, CEO of course. Now, what they are thinking is, how do I port my application to run on Linux without modifying anything on the application? Just modifying the application itself, not the source code to run only on Linux, but without modifying any functionality. That kind of, technology migration that they want to do. So right now it's not possible. It may not be possible, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. So now this is just an explanation on what I have already mentioned. Now if you take IaaS, the service provider is responsible for this underlying storage, networking and compute. And you can provision cloud services for that, right? You can provision a virtual, when you try to provision a virtual machine, you are just giving in Windows 7 when you are going to provision a virtual machine, you are saying this is my virtual machine name, this is the network I want, this is the cloud service I want. If you haven't created the cloud service, you can create one. And you are not actually worrying about creating the VM and and actually adding the hard disk. You are just filling the UI they have provided, but ultimately you are getting a fully provisioned virtual machine, right? And in this case, you provision and manage the virtual machine, operating system, runtime, applications, and data and access. In the second scenario, that is platform as a service. That means you are running your workload, SQL workload on the cloud. That's an example. Storage, networking, compute, virtual machine, operating system, and the runtime. Runtime, that means actually if you take SQL runtime is handled by the vendor, and you manage the applications. The application which requires data is managed by you, and the data access. How do you plan the incoming data? Is it coming through a separate, separate channel? Do you have a custom, if you take just an example, if you take a SQL data load, data importing platform or something like that. Now, in the financial field, they have several custom applications that they gather data. So your requirement is to get that data converted into business data and store it on SQL. So in this scenario, you are just only worrying about how to do that, not about the underlying server. You just provision, I need this much of RAM, this much of, and this SQL 2014 edition, enterprise edition. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about installing those stuff. You just worry about how to plan the business data. And the last scenario, software as a service. You are only worrying about the data access. That means you are only worrying about your data. Application is also provided by the vendor. That means if you take a Azure website, you don't have to worry about setting up IIS, installing the role and all. Now even they have a feature that you can connect from your local IIS plugin to the cloud-based website. And if you take the newer version of Visual Studio, it has the ability to connect to that website and run the demo from there, or test it out from there. So you are only worrying about the data, actual workload. Now, if you take antivirus companies like Symantec, McAfee, they are offering the antivirus as a software service these days. So, as a fact, I know that McAfee is offering software service. They are offering a small installer. You can install updates, management, heuristics, everything done from the cloud. And today's focus is infrastructure as a service. Now, if you take the trend and the speed of development and ease of use, see, if you are running virtual machines, degree of customization is high, and the speed, it takes time to provision a virtual machine, and you need to do some customization. Now, if you run a virtual machine, website inside a virtual machine, you have to actually set up the website, install IIS on that one, sort of customization, and it affects the speed. And if you move downwards, like the last one, website, in that you don't have much of customization, But speed development and ease of use is much higher, because you have to only worry about the website, not about the infrastructure. How do I plan my website? How do I distribute the traffic? Those stuff you have to worry. So that's about Azure computing choices. These are just 4 random features that I have chose. There are more features and more coming on way. That depends on your requirement. Now, about estimating the computing cost, you know that when you go to Microsoft Azure, I believe that most of you have even seen what we can do with Azure. If you take down this URL, you can see you can pre-calculate for the services. And if you get a pay-as-you-go, not a premium subscription, how do I say, with more increased RAM, more increased virtual machine storage, those type of virtual machine images are also available. If you take a standard pay-as-you-go subscription, you are only paying for what you are using, and you can pre-calculate that by going to this Azure pricing calculator. And if we take those top scenarios we have today, you need to store, backup, recover data. It's possible. Now, if you want to store your data in Microsoft, if you want to store your SQL data on cloud offsite, you can use SQL Azure. And if you want innovation with dev and test, that means you don't want your IT guy to go and provision virtual machine for your developers and DevOps. You can use Azure virtual machines for that. And scaling your infrastructure and extending reach. If you take a Azure's cloud service, it's scalable, highly scalable. And you can run your entire SharePoint server farm infrastructure on Windows Azure. If anyone of you has worked with SharePoint, actually, other than installing SharePoint server on a single server, installing SharePoint, stuff like that, it's more than that. Now, we are talking about SharePoint farms. Now hundreds of thousands of servers. And connecting hybrid infrastructure. You can have your single sign-on, your domain account to authenticate with cloud, with Windows Azure Active Directory. And you can have, if you take that, you can use your same Active Directory to sign on to your Office 365 account. So all these are, interconnected. Each and every Microsoft service, including Xbox, including Bing, are connected to the same platform. That's the main advantage. Not separate services. Each and every service has, links in between them. So it's easier to customize, easier to integrate, and easier to provide a complete solution to the end user. Now I'm going to talk about Windows Azure preview features. Actually, when we're saying what is a preview feature, now preview features are given for test purposes. They may come in the future as a general available feature, and they might not. That depends on the customer feedback that Microsoft gets. And these preview features doesn't adhere to the standard SLA or the agreement Microsoft has. It has a separate preview SLA. So when you're getting the preview feature, you are agreeing to that. So that's actually like you're giving a feature to a customer. From Microsoft point of view, you're giving this feature to a customer to test it out. At later point of time, you can decide, hey, when it's on general availability, you can decide, hey, I want to use this, I don't want this. Now, these are some preview features I have listed. Recent ones. This is not the complete list of preview features. These are some of the features that I have highlighted here. Actually, today we are going to show you this preview portal and remote tab. I have taken out the Express server because it's now in general availability. General availability in the sense, now it's in production. And we have new service tiers for a SQL database. That means now the SQL database, they have been given like 5 GB for standard stuff like that. So that pricing and that levels have been changed. They have another new tiers. new computing power, new storage capacity for SQL database. And billing alert service. You can set up billing alerts. Hey, my quota is exceeding. I'm getting an alert. Stuff like that. And Azure monitoring and alerting. Now, here I'm going to just show you how to enable preview features. And I have included in my workload, but when I log into my Azure account, I'm going to show you where these preview features are. First, you have to navigate to your Azure account. Actually, for those users who want to try out Windows Azure, if you have a web card, Sampath web card or a valid credit card and a Hotmail account, just sign up for a free 1-month trial. And after the trial, they won't charge, right? If you want to continue a subscription, you can continue. But if you abandon your account, the data inside the account will be there for another month or so, and the subscription gets destroyed. So you can use, it was previously 3 months time, but Microsoft has reduced that time because most people in US, they are using gift cards to connect to this one, and they are over provisioning the infrastructure, and when Microsoft goes to collect the bill, card is lost, customer is lost. So they can't really afford to that. So you can sign up for a free trial, and if you want, you can go for a pay-as-you-go subscription. Now even I have purchased pay-as-you-go subscription today, so I may never know how that's going to be because I'm out of trials and credit cards. And then you click preview features. When you move to the portal, there's a small section called preview features on the right hand side. It's here. And you can select the preview feature you want in the list of preview features. Now it's something called BizTalk services. You're going to click try now there. And then it asks what subscription you want to use for that. Now you can have multiple Azure subscriptions to a single account. That's the power. You can manage multiple subscriptions from one Microsoft account. Microsoft account in the sense, not your Office 365 account. If it's a federated one working with Microsoft, that's fine. Something like Hotmail or Outlook.com address. So for us to test out, the Hotmail address would be enough. And then you can add that preview feature, but some of the features, depending on the demand, wants you to be on the queue. Now, the remote tab feature I got here, I'm still on the queue, but for it, I don't know when I get the real feature inside, but I have the backend user connectivity at my laptop. I can show you that part. But actually, I wanted you to show how to package custom software and put it on Windows Azure remote tab and use it from your desktop. So now I'm going to show you what is the new preview portal looks like. Preview portal means it's not the name, it's just Azure portal, and if the new one is on preview mode. So actually this portal is highlighted for DevOps, developer operations. Nowadays people are looking for admins. You say you get an admin, IT guys who knows how to code, but they work on infrastructure, stuff like that. Now you are IT admin, you know how to index a SQL database. That kind of level. That's a middle level. To bridge the gap between developers and operations. That's called DevOps. So this portal is completely highlighted for DevOps. You can see a vast graphics. This one actually bit like a Torana. You have everything. As IT bros, we might not need it, but if you are a developer operations guy, you see now getting billing details, getting service sales, everything is required for you. So in that case, it's a comprehensive portal. And the cost prediction you can have cost prediction chart in there. So now at the end of the month, the bill is going to hit $1,000, stuff like that. And it's actually a wonderful experience in that portal. So in next slide, I am going to show you a demo. Actually, I need to show you how this looks like. Let me get my Azure subscription. Now if I take this one and I'm going to my account here. Now they have, you can choose whether you want to log into management portal or whether you can go to the billing part. You can see the bill and manage subscription. So I log into my Azure subscription here. Next. Don't worry, they won't charge a dime for you if you are running on the free trial. Just use a credit card. You don't have to worry about that. I have used credit cards and debit cards for this, and they are paying a single dime during the trial period. Now, if you have a MSDN subscription, they offer you $200 worth of credit each month. So that's for developers. Actually, we don't have that luxury of getting an MSDN subscription. Now, I am going into my portal. Right? This is the standard portal you see, right? Now I am going to move into the preview portal. It has an actual address called portal.azure.com, or you can go to the Azure website and see what are the preview features available, and then you can see check the preview portal there onwards. It's coming up. Okay. Like looks like it's downloaded and come up. And they have changed, the coloring as well. Now it's on the link blue, not on the dark blue. Okay, now you can see I haven't provisioned anything here. I don't have any VMs. It's just a brand new subscription. So see, you can see your billing plan, right? I have 2 subscriptions. One is cancelled, and I can see what notifications I have. Nothing to report because it's just a brand new subscription. And I can go to billing. See, I have one cancelled subscription and a pay-as-you-go subscription. Currently my bill is 0. And you can provision your virtual machines from here. See? Now, for some of our guys who used to the old portal, this may seem a bit odd because everything is like on something like Windows style. And if you take the service help, let me scroll. See, I can see what are the services up and running at the moment. If I take the Access Control 2.0, I can see in which regions this is functional. So it actually, provides a better understanding of the subscription we have. Like I said, it's important for developer operation. If you are running a scalable application, you need to know if a federated authentication fails, you need to know why this is failing. Maybe a ADFS server in East US is failing, so that's why your application is failing. That can happen. Like that. That's what you see on the Azure Preview portal. And there are more options here. You can see SQL databases, Steam projects, stuff like that. If you have a website, if you have your website on Azure, you can go here and see whatever you have. As I mentioned, I don't have anything because I purchased this few hours ago because I ran out of my trial. So that's about the preview portal. I hope Microsoft will get this done quickly for the production environment. Now let's move into the slide deck again. Now you have seen how this really looks like. The preview portal. You can try it on your free trial as well. Now I'm going to talk about the Azure Remote Tab. What is Remote Tab? It's actually a technology where you can deliver your Windows server-based applications from Azure. Those who are familiar with Citrix, think it as Citrix application stream. Right? Now, users can log into the application remotely from anywhere, even from your Android device, mobile, not from your Nokia 3310, only on your smart device. You can log in from anywhere, anytime. Doesn't matter about the device you are using. You just have to use Microsoft Remote Tab application for that, and you have to give your credentials. That means you have to provide your Microsoft credentials, and from there you can see what applications are available for you. And most important thing is these applications are actually on Windows Azure, but you will see that they are running on your own device. Right? Now the key features are you are getting the end user experience. you are not seeing whatever you have on the server and whatnot. And it supports on a number of clients, on your Windows Phone, your Android device, stuff like that. And you get 50 GB of storage per user. And actually this utilizes Windows Server 2012 R2 session virtualization. And these workload already has Office 2013 pre-installed. In my demo, I don't have any application published yet because I haven't, I'm still on the queue for that feature. But they have given me some demo applications, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. I'm going to show you launching those applications, not from local machine, but from Azure. And it's scalable and it supports cloud and hybrid deployment. You can have your workload on-premise and publish it to the cloud, and from cloud you can distribute it to the users. But keep in mind, now it requires port 443 open and for this DNS domain to be open on your firewall. But Microsoft recommends to have this port range open in your firewall. Actually, in my environment, we have an ISA server, a pretty old one. When I connected to the corporate network, I couldn't connect to the streaming application because these ports are not open. And from these published demo applications, Microsoft actually, because of this preview experience, hasn't enabled external internet access. So you can't use stuff like OneDrive feature. Now I'm going to show you the Word application running from that. Actually, you will see you can't connect to OneDrive from that. When you take Office 2000, Word 2000, you can, there's a feature to save it to OneDrive. It's not available. And this is the pricing for the preview. And as I said, if you want to use this feature, get registered today because you may never know when you are going to get the service, right? There's a long queue for this service to try out. So use it today. If you have a current Azure subscription, go to the preview feature section and register for this service. And now I'm going to show you how this client application works. That means not this backend in Windows Azure, but the client end on this product. Now, I have already installed that Microsoft Remote tab, right? I only have to launch it. Actually, it's not a setup you get when you click install on Microsoft Remote tab. It's running a click once installation, right? Everybody can see this, right? Now I'm going to go get started. Now it will ask me for my credentials. Now I'm going to use this account, my personal one. Now, if I have published an application and put it in this Windows Azure Remote tab and given the proper access for this account, I could see that application in the next window. But here, I haven't still got the actual feature, but I have the demo features to show you. Now, in this window, you will get whatever the applications available to you, just as in Citrix. You may remember, for those guys who know Citrix, when you go to Citrix portal, you have published the application in Citrix, you can see something similar to this, right? Now, if I am going to launch Excel from here, okay, it says C, connected to remote app 3. I'm not sure whether this connects because I'm a little bit slow on my dongle. Take some time to connect. And then you are getting the Excel window open, but it's not your local Excel. Microsoft Excel. Application. See this one? Seems like I have that application on my machine, but it's not actually from my machine, it's streaming from the cloud. So actually now these are preview features. If you go to save as, you don't see OneDrive here. That's what I'm talking about. The external access is disabled in this one. You can't really sign into this one. Just use this. Now they ask you for feedback, and just use this and sign up for the preview and get it and try to publish a custom application if you know how to, just a website or just a small hello world would do, to try out this feature. Okay. Now let's quickly move into the last section we have to cover today. That is ExpressRoute. Actually, for the ExpressRoute, I don't have a demo to show you. This is something came in earlier, but it's now in general availability. What this means is, it allows you to create private connections to the cloud. You are not going, now I am connecting to my dongle through a public internet service. Now in this case, you can connect to your public cloud over a designated network. That is, corporate MPLS network, or from a ExpressRoute location that is provided by a ISP. If you take SLT, if they are providing ExpressRoute, they are the exchange provider facility. So these connections do not go over public internet. That's a must. So it's going through a specific channel. So if you are working on a secured workload like financial data, stuff like that, if you are getting a financial data load, if you need a financial data load uploaded, right, you may use a VPN, right? For that you can use a VPN connect. Sorry, you can use the ExpressRoute, right? Actually, there are some key benefits in this scenario. You can, these are actually private connections to cloud, right? Like a direct VPN, you can say. And reliability and speed is high, latency is lower, security is higher, and you can directly connect from your existing WAN. If you have a dedicated MPLS line, you can use it to connect to Windows Azure. Right now, there are about 6 partners that support ExpressRoute. I am not aware whether our telco providers are providing this yet. I am not aware about that. Now, AT&T, BT, Equinox, Level 3, Verizon, and another group are providing the exchange provider facility for this one. And if you take the common scenarios we have right now connecting to Azure, this is the way we do it. We have the customer data center here, and we are connecting to a site-to-site VPN to Windows Azure through public internet, right? This is for compute only on a virtual network. And if you take a ExpressRoute location, there are two ways you can do it. You can connect to a partner location from a direct link, and from there you can connect to Microsoft Azure, or else you can connect from a WAN network provided by a telco provider. That means a dedicated MPLS link, not a ADSL link, dedicated lease line. From there you can connect to Microsoft Azure from different sites. So if you have branch offices with with dedicated links, you can connect that to the cloud directly with this option. Now, the advantage on this one is, now some of your customers can say, hey, this is public cloud. The US government is spying on everything. You can't actually see what's going on in the internet. You can suggest this if this is available on your country. You are directly connecting to the cloud. No, nothing on the middle. Just you, exchange provider, and the cloud provider, that is Azure, or directly it's you and Windows Azure public cloud. Now these are some resources I have highlighted. If you want to know more about how to publish a remote app, how to design your ExpressRoute infrastructure, what kind of a connection I should use, how to provision that, you can use these resources. I am going to share this one with you. And just try out the cloud. Get a free trial and provision few VMs and whatnot. And there's an excellent site with resources called earlyexperts.net, right? In that site, I will share that URL in our Facebook group. There's a lab guide you can do, right? You can get a free trial and use that lab guide to get a basic understanding of Azure. Ultimately, that lab is designed for 3 hours. It's basically getting a SharePoint farm done. But in that lab guide, you don't have to worry about anything about SharePoint. You will get the complete knowledge of provisioning VMs, networks and everything. And even they are offering you a certificate to hang on your wall, called you are a certified early expert on this technology. And there's another site called keithmeyer.com. He's a technical evangelist with Microsoft. His site has excellent content on Windows Azure, external labs steps as well. You can use that. I will share those resources on the Facebook group and this slide deck and the previous slide deck as well. Does anyone have any questions? We are a little bit running out of time, that's why. Okay, I think everyone is good. Okay guys, thank you for attending today. I think we are going to have a break.
So, Janaka previously on his last slide deck was talking about the part of the solution, the future, where we were talking about the applications of Office across any devices. So that's the future going to be like. We are not expecting everyone is going to use only Microsoft devices. It can be like a tablet, smartphones, which can be various on various platforms. But the key idea is, regardless of the platform, for the end users, what they care about is, can I run my applications from anywhere, from any location? So that's the whole idea about even in this session today, talking about in Server 2012 R2, what we have done the enhancement on the application publishing, which we call now, earlier we call as Terminal Server, but now the name has been changed to RDS, Remote Desktop Services. And then the other one is Desktop Virtualization. So this is one controversial technology. I was every time we talk with customers, I'm explaining this one. VDI is something every customer wants to have, just to reduce the cost. But the biggest problem is VDI upfront development cost or the establishing cost is very high. So because of that, in management level and the CIO level, there's a word always we talk about is ROI, return on the investment. So I would say in the other way, recovery of the investment. So the problem is, if the upfront the cost is very high, then how can we actually go for the solution or justify the management? So this is something we are going to talk about along the way, but I'm not going to talk about from the management point, but technical point of view. How easily we can deploy that one and what are the challenges, what you need to think about it. So saying that, let me introduce very high level about me because some of you might be already familiar. My name is Susanta Silva and I'm a senior consultant actually working for a company called Reed Analytics Asia. I'm not sure whether you can see anything in that one actually. Basically, we are a company mainly focused on system center and cloud solutions. So nothing, no AD, no exchange, nothing like that. We are purely focused on one single technology on the entire APAC region. So saying that, I'm also MVP on the virtualization area. So this is a product and a technology I am being very much enthusiastic regardless if the Microsoft or non-Microsoft. So saying that, quickly the agenda we are going to talk about, the VDI background. So again, I really want to make sure some technologies I'm going to talk about vendor neutral method. So it's easy for you all to understand because this VDI technology is not something new. So we usually talk about across different vendors, how it happens. But then I'm going to jump into the Server 2012 R2. What are the enhancements we have done this time for the VDI technology? And then on the RDS, or we call it the Remote Application Delivery. And then we'll talk about how we can publish that one. And finally, I'll leave it for questions and answers if you have anything. So quickly, end of this session, what I really want you all to think about, Windows Server 2012 R2 includes actually ability to publish remote apps. This is becoming very much important for me, from my perspective, because more than VDI, actually application what you really prefer, from any device to access. Because you might not prefer to have the same desktop to access from home, but if you can access your application, the application that you access in the office, if you can access from any devices, smartphone or tablet, then it makes sense. Even if you are late to the office or if you are in a remote location, you can get the job done. So this is where we have done some enhancement on the Server 2012. And the other thing is, end of the day, the deployment is pretty much easier rather than what we used to do like a couple of years back. So we'll have a look at it about how we're going to do that. And you can see the last one. You can use a variety of clients, including iOS, OS X, Android, Windows, and Windows RT. So you can see the message is very clear from even from Microsoft. We wanted to give these technologies for you, but across any of those devices. By now, even if you all have any other platform device, non-Microsoft, have a look at it on those platforms. Like if it's Apple, go to the Apple Store. If it's Android, go to the Google Store. And have a look at it. There's a Windows Remote Desktop client now available to do this one. So just before we start about, let me go through the background of level setting about the VDI technology. currently there are 3 sessions or 3 modes we can deliver these applications and the virtual machines or the VDIs. One is we call remote app and remote desktop sessions. So what will happen is in the central server we install all the application and end users we give session for them. So what as Janak mentioned earlier, end users will feel like the application running in their machine, but actually they are running in the background in a central server. It can be one server, it can be a farm. So think about like IBM dumb terminal concept, where you have one, like let's say powerful server, and you have machines, only monitor and keyboard. So all users are connected to that central server. All the power is actually in that central server. So same scenario. And then we have a concept called pooled VM. Assuming that this is very much familiar for a lot of institutes I have seen. If you have a classroom and you have been given the task, say tomorrow we are having a classroom, we want to have, let's say, Office 2020 and Visual Studio installed, and 30 people, we want to use the desktop for them. So what will happen is, in this scenario, for each student, we don't want to give them a unique desktop. For everyone across, it has to be a common desktop. Everyone will get Windows 7, everyone will get Office 2010, everyone will get Visual Studio 2010 or 2030. Similar. None of the person will get a unique desktop. Everyone is common. So that kind of scenario, we have a desktop pool. 20, 30 desktops are there in the server pool. So any user can log in as long as the credentials are correct, and they will get one of these desktops delivered to them. So simple as that. When you log out, all the data will be removed, or either we can configure it to save the data somewhere else. Desktop will come back to the same state. So it's a fresh OS again. So this is one concept some customers want. The other one is we call personal VM or a dedicated virtual machine. Let's assume this person is someone. When someone connected to the virtual desktop and he do some modification onto the desktop and some document saving everything, when he come back next day and when he enter user and password, he get the same desktop. He get the same settings what he done. Doesn't matter, he can connect from home, from office, from the road, while he's traveling, he always get the same desktop. So this is we call persistent desktop. Sorry, persistent. Never get changed, same desktop. There are some people who prefer this method. Okay? But think about that your company, how your company functions. If your anyone having a large call center or help desk in your company, if you have such a scenario, think about, does help desk users need the same desktop or different desktop? If it is the same desktop, every day they want to see, if they are working on shift based method, then pool VM is going to make sense. But if you have managers and then we call heavy task workers, they want the same desktop because they are going to save some data and everything like that. And when they travel and they want to do changes frequently, if the desktop is always going to be back for the normal one, it's confusing because they might save the data on desktop or maybe some other location. For them, personal or persistent VM is going to make sense, VDI. So those are the 3 technologies that are available in the market, vendor regardless. Whether it's Citrix, whether it's Microsoft, whether be it VMware View, doesn't matter. These are the technologies available. So that's why I mentioned this is vendor regardless method. But from the Microsoft perspective, this is what we offer on Server 2012 R2. So idea behind that one, Server 2012 R2 is a one single platform. One platform, same experience. When you want to do actually, we start with remote app. Next day your company might say, hey, we don't want to buy new desktop every time. Can we use the existing old desktop, but use the latest operating system for that? Then you come up with the pool VM or personal VM. But rather than buying a different technology, on the same server 2012, you get the same experience. So as long as you know the server manager, same platform, same experience, but 3 deployments per year. Practically, what I have seen is a lot of customers start with the conversation with us, these 2. But once we explain the situation and demo this one, this is what they would start initially. Rather than, because remember VDI is very costly. I'll explain why, what are the scenarios and the problems for that part. So this is much more familiar one. So server 2012 R2, rather than before I go to demo, let me talk about 2 things. First of all, I assume everyone is like have a high level idea about server 2012 R2 server manager. Now, for the Microsoft, they really wanted to change the way you are thinking. Think server manager is a central management, you do like, let's say, other server role management, everything is server manager. So as long as you familiar with server manager, it's all about going over there. This is adding about roles. That's all. Simple as that. But these are the challenges. Think about the topology and storage. I'll come to that one in a different time. These are other challenges. When you are creating VDI, you need to have sysprep image. That means it's called gold image, master image. So you have one Windows 8 desktop. You install all the application that you want to run in that one. Then you shut it down by using a command called sysprep. Sysprep means remove all the Unix settings on that one and then keep it as a fresh OS. Now, whenever you get a desktop or laptop, first time, you must be saying that you have to go through certain scenario, enter your username, password, change desktop color. So that is we call the short word, it's called OOBE, OOBE, out of the box experience. So sysprep is something like that. You install everything, you shut it down and convert it to out of the box experience, first time when you're logging in. Then after that, every time when a user comes and say I need a desktop, when you enter username and password, from the golden image, he get a copy of that desktop. So every time, let me see if I can go and explain it. So let's assume this is a golden image of the OS, Windows 8, and let's assume this is a 40 GB virtual machine you created, virtual hard disk. You install all the Windows 8 plus apps. So this is your golden image. It is shut down state all the time. When new user comes and asks for let's say virtual machine, basically you are creating another virtual machine of this one. But you are using this 40 GB one as the base OS. User getting a similar clone copy, but it will never take 40 GB. It might start with maybe 1 GB. When the user tries to keep on saving data or generating data, then this keep on growing. Okay? So when the user shuts down, this temporary operating system will be deleted and get back to the master image. Master image never get changed. Every time when the users come, they will be getting created random images like that from this clone. That's what happened basically. So users' data, we can give a different storage and we can redirect from there when the user shut down the OS. Data saved over here, operating system destroyed, and this is every time when someone asks for new desktop, it comes from over here. So this is the concept it actually happens. Any questions? If someone said, no, I need to have a permanent desktop for each, then actually from the clone we take full copies. So then the problem is that the storage will be keep on growing, storage requirement. But in this method, it's kind of like a fix all the time. Okay? And the other challenges we are getting normally, the users wanted to, let's say they go for a website and they enter username and password and they go and say, okay, I need a desktop. When you click that icon, again you are getting another prompt. Type the username and password again. This is a hassle. Users don't want to enter username and password again and again. When you go inside the virtual machine, again you have to enter username and password. So when you have problems like that, maybe in your companies as well, you might be facing this problem. You might have different application. For the Windows login, you enter ActiveDirect username and password. When you go to one of the application inside that one, that is not integrated with Active Directory, so you have to enter another username and password. So think about, if you have 10 applications like that, the end user needs to remember 10 username and password. So that is where we ended up users typing their password and usernames on the, like let's say on the screen, the sticky paper, so anyone can see. So to remove that issue, we use something called certificates. Certificate basically used for single sign-on. Okay? And rest of the things actually about the KMS for licensing part. I'm not worried about too much about that. And then these are the part on the end user. This is the server side. This is the end user side what you have to manage. Again, deal with the certificate. Is everyone familiar with the concept called certificate authority on Active Directory? There's a concept called internal certificate authority. But the problem is, when this particular user going home and access that website, internal certificate never trusted. You will be always getting saying this is not trusted. So the biggest problem is in this kind of solution is certificate. So either we have to go for GoDaddy or like any other third-party vendor and buy a public certificate just to avoid that problem. And then give the web access. And then I'll show you some of your, some users don't even like to go to website. They will say, okay, I have my smart tablet or tablet computer. Can I have all the application access icons in my tablet? So when I go home or when I travel, can I access those applications quickly? So I'll demo that one, how we can do that one. we talk about any of those things, how easy and everything. Let me demo this one very quickly, how it happens. I'm not going to finalize the deployment. I'm just going to go ahead with this set of options. Can everyone see the text option? Okay. So this is one of the VM I have taken now, just for the demonstration purpose. So let's assume this is my server that I'm going to publish where the application and the virtual machines. Okay. So I assume this server manager everyone is familiar. So the whole idea behind this demo, I'm going to show even publishing the application or virtual desktop how easily we can do that part. So if I take one of these servers, I just go to add roles and features. Next. This is where we need to overlook. Yeah. On the second tick of the installation type, it's in your fingertips all the time. Remote desktop service installation. Normally we select this and quickly go in A and then select the server and then we think about roles and services. But if I come back all the way to the installation type, here we have the option remote desktop services installation. So you can see install required role services to virtual desktop to create virtual machine based on session-based desktop deployment. Blah blah blah. But let's go next. Now we have two options: standard deployment and quick start. Now let's assume, remember I mentioned in my first slide deck, a lot of customers they talk about VDI, but when we explain rather than VDI publishing application is the best, then only their mind actually gets changed. So this is an option like that. If you want to quickly publish some application without being too much techy and think about these issues, select quick start. It's a single server. We set up all the roles and then we actually allow you to publish application very quickly. Not VDI, application can be published. So you can publish them even to the outside people or internal. But let's assume you try to do a proper way, standardized way, where you will be installing this application on a couple of servers. Because if you have, let's say, 100 plus users in your company and you want to do this solution, putting them all the server roles in one server is not going to make any sense. With 5 or 10 users, go for quick start. I would say the best. But above that, always think about the standard deployment, the proper way. So if I take you along that step, I get two options. Virtual machines, whether you want to go for the VDI solution or whether you just want to go for the session-based. Session-based means application publishing. Okay. So if I go to the session-based, now you can see the next steps. These are the servers we need. Role services, are the connection broker, web access, are the session host, blah 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 on it. So the best recommended method is each of them have separate server. So the next question is, okay, then that means I need to have a lot of servers. The question is yes, and the answer is no. Because if you are in a virtualization, we are talking about creating a couple of virtual machines. Because this is the best way. In case something goes wrong, you can quickly recover. Otherwise, if you put everything into one, if the server is damaged or corruption, no one can access the application. So this is why we call this is the best method. So you will be putting separate servers in separate rows. Now saying that, let me go ahead quickly. So you need to have separate server roles. Remote desktop connection broker, where the users, all the sessions will be managed by that one. Then a web access, where website will be installed, so users will be able to connect to the URL. And then the session management server. Okay. So in my demo, for this particular purpose, for everything I'm going to select the same server, DC2. So I don't have additional server roles. But in the proper structure, you should have separate server roles. So you can see for everything, every server role, I'm going to select the same server, VM. So finally, what is this structure? Finally, you will be actually your DC2 will be restarted once to configure this service. So this is the general way. Now if I go back the steps quickly for you all. go for the again remote desktop. And this time I'll go for the quick start. Let's see what are the options on the quick start. So you can see as soon as I select quick start, all the other options went off. Quickly and wait for deployment scenario, server selection. So because this is like any user can quickly do. Again I'm going to go for session based because I really don't have a method to demo VDI. Because for VDI we need to have minimum 2 servers. One server will be hosting all these server roles, and the one server has to be Hyper-V server with one Windows 8 image or Windows Server 2012 image. That's going to be our VDI server, which I won't be able to demo right now. So you can see, like, again when I say session based, no more additional server selection option, only single time. All the other rows that I demo for you earlier going to be inside this single server. So they are going to make it very much easier. Okay, so it goes on like that. The server will be restarted, blah blah blah. I'll let it happen in the background, so it might take time. So let me quickly show the experience, how it's going to be like. So this is one scenario. Once we completed that structure, install it properly and publish the application, end users might see something like that. They will go for the particular URL, let's say in my case rds.consulting.asia/rdweb. That's all they type. And then they will have to enter the username and password. So they will get a console like this. In this console, you will publish in the background on the server what are the application I'm going to use for the user. Now, one more thing is like, as I mentioned, because it will be going across any devices, as long as you now in my case I have Android tablet. So even an Android tablet, if I download the same RD client and type this URL, then actually I will be able to see the same applications. So I have 2 locations actually I publish these applications. Once this loaded up, I'll demo for you. The idea behind that one, even though the operating systems are changed, this is Android, this is Windows, these applications are Microsoft applications. So even in an Android machine, it doesn't matter because we don't care about, we are not going to run anything using the power of the Android tablets. Everything happens in the background server. So the application experience for the user always seamless. So this is what really matters. Maybe like you all have heard about a concept called bring your own devices. In the, one of the future things what's going to happen now very soon. So in that situation, users are allowed to bring whatever the laptop they prefer, or users are allowed to bring whatever the tablets they prefer or smartphone. Company will only give them a URL and they will say, okay, go for that URL, the applications are published. Or if the company might give icons to put it to their devices, so the icons will be published. Let me quickly show that one as well. In my case, I'll try to take one of the live system which is running on Singapore right now. So this previous one actually this is in my company, Malaysia, and here I'm just going to Singapore, one of the data centers. So it says ready for RDP session. If the authentication is successful, I should be able to see the application published on that server. Now this application, what I have done, same application window, I just publish it onto my Android as well. The whole idea behind that one, whatever the application I can use over here, it will be same on the Android as well. And if I click one of them, the experience always the same. Because as I mentioned, this is not going to use the Android power. The application is published on this side, on the server side. So if I had Apple MacBook, it will be the same scenario. So it's a matter of actually downloading the application client and running that one. So if I have properly configured the single sign-on, when I click that icon, I don't have to enter username and password again. It's a single click, that's all. Application will be loaded. Now next time you might not have to come to this website because all the application downloaded icons, I can publish them on my Windows machine as well. If I go to, so you can see I have already published them as well. So in my desktop, this might be my personal computer. I can publish these applications. None of them actually really install on my laptop. It's actually in the cloud. So I'm just, not in the cloud, actually someone else's data center. I'm using them. If I really don't want to go to that web URL, then put all those icons into your machine. So we can use this one using the group policy as well. So depending on your connection speed, it will take some time. In my case, I'm just going to show you a memory hungry application running in their data center. So the application is already loaded. It's a matter of actually the server in their side executing everything, because this is very resource hungry application I'm running right now. So this is so far I'm demoing for you all RDS, Remote Desktop Services. The only difference is the other one is VDI, means I'll be actually showing you a desktop. That's the only difference. So this is where like I really don't have infrastructure for that one. So I'll quickly demo the steps. So we went through this one, these steps. So you can see like in a proper structure, you need to have the proper VMs breakdown for the servers. So that's how we actually, the consultant stage, we decided based on your company organization structure, how many servers we need for this particular task. Now, this is actually an example of VDI. Now, if I go back, we went through this slide there, this session. Now, the next one is very important. They're asking, okay, if you want to make a VDI, so you want to give desktop to the end user, give me the golden image. Have you created a master image, the one I mentioned about here? So this is something inside a Hyper-V, or in your case, if it's in VMware, then it has been on ESX server. If it's in a Citrix, it can be in a Citrix server or in a Hyper-V, because Citrix supports both hypervisors. So inside there, you will be creating a Windows 8, or if the organization said no, we have Windows 7 is standardized, create a Windows 7 image, install all the application, run sysprep. This is very important, sysprep. And then one more thing. This is a field tip. Most of the time you might not get this message. When you create Windows 8, install all the application. When you run sysprep, normally VDI deployment consultant says, yeah, that's enough, that's the correct method. It is not. One more thing is missing. If you install Windows 8 apps and go to the internet and download the latest applications, everything, and then there is something we call cleaning need to be done. Any idea why I mentioned cleaning? What does that cleaning mean? Can anyone think about what cleaning means? I installed Windows 8, fresh OS on a image, on a Hyper-V or VMware or Citrix, whatever. I installed Windows 8 image, installed all the application, went to the internet, download all the updates, and then I'm about to do sysprep. So then I can create a gold image. But before that, I had to do proper cleaning. What is proper cleaning means? Any idea what is proper cleaning means? It's like this. Have you all noticed when you install Windows updates, there's a temporary folder created and temporary files are saved. So think about, in VDI, I mentioned, actually I didn't mention. So let me put it on the consulting factor. Important things are storage, and then network. This is my method of explaining, because someone put CPU top like that. But for me, this is how we think about. Storage is very important on VDI, because earlier you have 100 desktop, each of machine having a desktop, hard disk. But here now we are going to put everything into one server. So storage is going to be a number one priority. How we are going to save storage capacity. Number two, network. When 100 users are going to connect into a single server and asking for the images, then how the network bandwidth I'm going to manage. This is the second one. Third one is finally CPU, processor power. Earlier, every computer had a CPU, but now we are going to come, all the users come to single server. So then what about the processor power? So on this storage part, 40 GB is my hard disk. When I install a lot of applications and Windows update, there are temporary files going to be created. They are also taking space. When this 40 GB image, we have to be temporarily cloned to a VDI. It takes time because this capacity is high. So what I want to do is clean them. So like cleaning, either you can do manually, run this defragment, clean up the disk, uninstall unnecessary software, disable unnecessary services, so then the CPU can be managed properly. So either you can do everything manually, or else you can run one script. So script, as Janaka mentioned, keep in tune for the IT Pro. I'll share the script for you all in the Facebook group. So I'll share you the script where you can do everything once. Install a golden image of the machine has been restarted, the VM. You might be able to have to. So this is one place why we normally, rather than I don't normally like to do demos on the live demos. So you always have to pray things will go smoothly. But when you're running everything with a very limited resource machine, it will be always a problem like that. Because if everything goes properly, I should be able to demo you this screen. So in VMware and then on the Citrix, they also have a similar method. They might have different views for you to go. But in Microsoft, we decided no, we are going to put everything to one console for you all. So as you can see, all the server rows, even though those are physical servers separating your virtual machines, I can get a one console and look at it, how things are happening. So in this situation, I have a virtual desktop pool. But these are VDI. If I have application published, I'll be able to see RDI session host over here or the application published. These are the server rows that you install. If you have done the installation properly, then it will be on gray color. But if you have never done the installation properly, or if you don't install one of those server rows, they are on green color saying available to install. Normally in a proof of concept environment, we never install RDA licensing because licensing custom will purchase finally when it comes to production state. Otherwise, web access, connection broker, and then either VDI or session host. Even gateway is not necessary. Gateway required if you are going to access these applications or VDI from the internet to your network. So coming from the outside to your network. Otherwise, web access, connection broker, these things are more than enough. You can skip gateway and licensing on a POC concept. So here you will be able to see for each of these server roles, what are the actual server name, server full qualified domain name, and the server role running. It's a one graph actually. In 2008 R2, we need to go for different consoles to do this one. You have licensing server, different management console, connection broker, different management console, you have to click. But now what we have done is consolidated everything into a single console. Now, this part actually I mentioned for you all as well earlier, remote app one. So the only difference that you can see, just explanation now actually going on. Remote app, it's all about in a single server, as I mentioned, the CPU resources, network resources, storage is going to be used. Now, can I know even before take it to the next level, has anyone had a plan or even tested out either application publishing or VJ in your organization? Okay, fine. Because just to give you a practical scenario, I mentioned always when you are engaging with a discussion with any provider, ask this question. Practically, the biggest problem for the VDI technology is storage. Again, storage what? Always IOPS, input output speed. Remember, like when we engage, actually we ask the question, what kind of a users do you want to go for the VDI? Are they heavy task users, or like they are only accessing web emails and then running Excel, Word, Excel laptop? Then actually the number of IOPS will be reduced. Based on that, we calculate the storage. Not the capacity, mostly, it's most about the IOPS speed, if it is in a SAN or like on a normal disk. That's why the word or the product called SSD comes to picture. SSD hard disks are very high speed, they have very high IOPS capacity. So a lot of VDI deployment we consider about SSD. The number of users are high. And then the network, I'm not really worried as long as users are connected to this application, internal network, internal LAN, because 100 Mbps is more than enough. But if you are connecting from the outside, then you have to think about the bandwidth. So again, when you are evaluating a VDI project or RDS project, always ask or always question them, what is the protocol? Is the protocol is bandwidth? If the protocol is aware about the bandwidth. Think about you are going to access your application from home. Then what about if you are connected from the WAN? If your application, this publishing application doesn't aware about the WAN link speed, and he doesn't know how to adjust automatically, then the users will complain the application access always slow. So this is where like even Microsoft we are using RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol 7.1. In Citrix, if I'm correct, I think that the name actually they changed for HDX technology. If I'm correct on the VMware, it's called PCOIP. So different vendors have different protocols. Each of them will be claimed our protocol is much more optimized for WAN bandwidth access, which is the truth, because they have to be very much concerned about the WAN bandwidth. Any customer go for VDI or remote application publishing, why they want to do that? So the main task is so they can reduce the cost of buying desktop, stop buying desktop. And the other one is let the users access from anywhere. So they will get the job done from anywhere. So like for the business owners, it's really good. No more 9 to 5 rule. You have the access from anywhere. It's good for them. But the important part is technical for us. If the link speed is not really good, then we can't work. So the application, this particular RDS technology, or we call Senap, or we call ThinView, whatever technology they call, they have to be made sure WAN optimized, WAN bandwidth aware. So question those things. Finally, CPU are not, to be honest, worried about these days. We are getting very much high-speed network connection. So it's all about idea. The diagram fact says remote app means one single server application, single time installed to the server. When users connecting, we are actually giving them separate memory, separate CPU power, separate network power, and giving to the user separately. So that's why capacity plan is very much important in this situation. So I mentioned about this one, pinning the application. So even though the desktop, the users will see these icons in their machine, these applications are really running on the background server. So we just try to pretend the users, we got all the applications installed. So you can see here on them we was the Citrix receiver. This Citrix will be installing Citrix receiver. And some customers, if you are using Windows 7, in that case, in the program files, I can pin down the application. Because now Windows 8 is the file menu. So if it's touch-based method. Windows 7, the program files in this method, again we can actually install the icons. These are icons only. So you can see we got within bracket work resource, remote command. So these are the two technologies. Again, same concept, diagram wise, no big difference to be honest. But compared with the RDS, if you are going to do VDI, you need a lot of resource power, like CPU power and the memory, and especially hard disk SSD. That's why the cost is very high. I asked a question from you all. Have you all tried doing VDI or RDS project on your company? Or has anyone got a plan you want to suggest that one to the company? Because this is VDI is one of the discussion going on with a lot of CIOs, IT managers. So we can reduce the cost. And we don't have to buy desktop every 5 years, every 4 years. Rather than we use the same desktop, we will actually install a thin client, or to be honest, even a Linux OS, and give the desktop icon so the desktop will be delivered for them. So the idea behind that one is sometimes they can even give them very cheap thin clients. No OS in that one. Basically OS will be delivered. In that way the company can save money. That's how the management look at the situation. But the biggest problem is to implement this, your existing hardware is not going to be enough. So they have to invest on this technology. So this will be, the cost will be very high. That's why like a lot of VDI projects that start in, not in Sri Lanka, all the other countries, everything is fine, everyone likes the technology when we demo. When it comes to the productivity stage, everyone drop it. Why the cost is too high? So this way like even this SAN vendors, HP, EMC, everyone actually try to find out the cheap cost method of providing storage with a low cost. And then the network vendors try to come up with the various technologies. And Microsoft, Citrix, VMware try to optimize these technologies. And Microsoft actually now, they are also stepping into the storage. For the VDI, they are saying we will get technology much more cheaper than any of the other vendors. So everyone got a picture actually in this technology. So we went through these diagrams. Only difference is now, here again we are going to select the VDI pool deployment. And let me come to the important part in this situation. Normally, a desktop connection, remember I mentioned there are two, pool or like a personal virtual desktop. you get the option to select. This is a template, this is fine. If your template you have selected over here, have you actually configured? Normally, let me put the question like that. If you have virtual desktop plan done properly, the next question is, when the user starts, does that VDI image need to be added to the domain, activate the domain or not? And every time when the user starts the virtual image, if you have to go and configure Active Directory, it's a problem. So we can put an answer file and then keep it. So every time the VDI image starts, it will join to the domain and give the prompt to the user. Very much easy. These things are general ones. Who are the users can access the VDI image? You can control them, and how many VDI images you want to create. So users can create. So this can be like 100, 200, whatever in number, as long as your hardware is enough. And how the VDI image name should start. The computer needs to start. So you can do a standardization. And this is the number of resources you allocate. Now the important part is this, storage. Now practical, in the production state, if you are going to do a VDI, you need to have SAN storage. If someone says without SAN we can do it, yes you can do it, but you will not run it for a long time. You can do a cluster shared volume, or if you have high speed SAN technology, use the path for that one. So you can select which technology you want to use. And the next question, if I do VDI, every user gets the same desktop. So when you are saying if I shut down the VM, data get lost. So then where the user is going to save the data. So you can decide whether you want to give each user a separate hard disk space on a SAN or somewhere else. So when they shut down the VM, data will be saved on that particular location. So here you can say enable user profile disk and how much per user normally we should give. So we are at the moment doing a project for a customer where we will be actually giving them 1 GB because that's a classroom for an institute. But if it's a production network, production user, let's assume an example company like Amos, some reason you have let's say 5,000 users, 200 users they are going for the VDI, those are heavy users. In that case, we might have to come to 10 GB or 20 GB for the data storage. So here you can say each time, even though he gets a different desktop, his data will automatically come from the same place. So it doesn't matter he gets a different desktop each day, his data is still saved. That's what matters. This is what actually showing user profile. So then it will be actually restarting a couple of times and the VDI is done. Now I mentioned about the Hyper-V site, how we do that one. When we talk about the personal and pool, this is a comparison. I really don't want to talk about comparison, but this is one thing I really want to highlight, the storage. I mentioned a lot of VDI projects fail because of the cost. So the Microsoft come up with, they say, instead of SAN, go with 2 Windows Server 2012 servers, connect them to their disk, and then come up with what we call scale-out file server, which connect to the protocol called SMB. Now, anyone has idea what is the normal SAN connectivity speed from SAN to a server? What is the maximum speed we can have using a fiber channel? Let's see. Any idea? 10. 80. 8. Okay. Yeah. So normally even what I heard is 4, 6, maybe 8. Yeah. So that's the maximum they can go at 6. How about if I tell you using this solution you can go to 56 Gbps? The reason is, what is the maximum network speed card you are getting these days on a server? 1G? 56? No. 1G I know definitely getting. What's the next stage of 1G now? We are getting normally these days. 10 gig. 10 gig cards, right? 56 Gbps cards are special cards. We call RDMA, and the company called Mellanox actually publishing these cards. Very high speed one. But think about like you don't have money to buy those cards. But typically with any vendor, normally 10 gig cards you are getting. If you ask, let's assume, 2 10 gig cards for each server, and then here you got 2 10 gig cards. When you combine 2 10 gig cards on this scale-out file server technology using SMB protocol, I can use the throughput of 20 Gbps as it is. So if I have 4 cards, 40 Gbps. If I have 56 Gbps network card, 56 Gbps connectivity for these Hyper-V servers from the storage aspect. So to be honest, like the biggest problem is now not the network speed, the speed of whether the hard disk can speed that quickly. So in a proper way. So that's why a lot of companies now putting on the VDA side, SSD. SSD is a must. You can start with SAS hard disk. Doesn't matter, you can start. But pretty soon when you try to scale it up, users will complain. So you need to have either SSD or else you can actually combine with the SAS hard disk 15K or 10K, give the true output. Sometimes I have seen the problem. Here you have SSD, but here you have 4 GPPs connection. And you have 100 VGA solution. Still the users complain. Why the bottleneck is always in the connectivity? So you have to make sure in your planning, if you get SSD, make sure from SSD to the particular Hyper-V, or sorry, for the VGA technology with the Hyper-V VM plus it is, the connectivity between the storage and those servers is also fast. Not 4 Gbps if you are going for high-end down. So those are the actual practical scenarios we have seen the problem. A lot of companies, they try to use, I have existing SAN and I have existing SAN switches. So can I buy some servers and go for the VGA? Everything is fine. When you're increasing the number of VGAs, then the complaints come because of the storage issues. So practical scenario. These are actually real world scenarios, thinking which technology is the best. Now, it depends. I really cannot explain you like what is the best out of all these things. Each of these scenarios will be depend. Sometimes each person getting a unique desktop every time is a must. Sometimes if you are doing this solution for a classroom, institute, or for a call center, go for a full VGA. Otherwise, if you are having a sales force, a lot of sales people, and a lot of your company people are traveling, in that case, forget about all those VGA, go for the remote tab, because users can access the data from any device. Each scenario will be different. So I mentioned about this one earlier as well, creating a template and syspread, but I mentioned there's a script. So I'll publish the script for you all. Now, I mentioned about the remote desktop as well, the application publishing. This is the biggest problem. You are getting always like, if you use internal certificate, you will get the certificate is not trusted. It's very annoying. If you are going to go for outside and let's say maybe one of the top people try to do a demo for a company, and let's say says, okay, let me show you the application. When you go to the URL, if you are saying this is really impressive. So this is where you need to either buy a public certificate. So we look at that one. This is for let's say for a POC environment, doesn't matter. You can actually install this certificate into your internal certificate portal and it will be trusted. But don't do that on a production stage. So this is something I didn't demo for you all. I actually demo you the effect of this one. Remember I mentioned the desktop icons can be published on my desktop. I just mentioned for you all in the Windows 8 side. My applications are published, right? So how did I do this one, this application publishing? So it's a matter of actually going to the control panel. Assuming you have already done the application publishing properly, once you install the remote desktop client, you are getting an icon called remote app and desktop connection. Go for that one and say remote access app and desktop. Type the URL. Once you type the URL properly, which I have already done in my case, you can say I already have 14 applications published properly. This is actually what you saw will be happening. Once it's done properly, you get the icons over there, sorry, the icons that I mentioned. Because like same thing happened on the tablets and the Apple computers and Apple tablets, even the smartphone. Now RDP client is available. Now before that, let me highlight. Citrix is the number one on this technology. Initially they started because they are the pioneers on this technology. Now Citrix and Microsoft actually have a relationship more than 10 years back. So they were working together on this technology. Recently Citrix actually dropped one of their technology because application publishing, because Microsoft also doing the same thing. So there's no point of like Citrix will be relying on Microsoft. Why? Citrix give their technology, but what is running on top of that one? Microsoft or non-Microsoft application. So because of that, when the Microsoft also come with the same technology, basically on Synapse, so Microsoft actually returned to the Synapse because of their technology. So Synapse in a remote publishing method, now the Citrix actually dropped that one because Microsoft is doing the same technology. So like as I mentioned, across any device, now Microsoft publishing the application. So Citrix is much more focused now on the VDI side. So Microsoft also giving the VDI technology, but Citrix tries to be a little bit ahead of that one. But considering most of the customer scenarios in Sri Lanka, apart from few customers, I have seen the Microsoft one is more than enough. Because we never seen any customer asking from us, I want to go for like 1,000 VDI solution, 2,000. Most of the conversation we ended up like less than 500. So it's much more like easier with the Microsoft one. And this one actually Janak already demonstrated for you all. Only problem we had is like we didn't have the Azure demonstration because we didn't have subscription. It's the same technology. What I really want to highlight over here is most probably what you learn over here, remote application publishing, when you prepare for that kind of technology, you might not have to install it in your office anymore. Because you already got the cloud, you go to the cloud and install your application, you then users access. Forget about the internet connectivity, forget about the single sign-on issues, they will sort out those problems. So it is kind of a matter of time how far the technology adapted and used. So what I demoed over here will be most probably you might use it on the Windows Azure publish method. So this one actually about the preview details, again, John already discussed, I'm not going to talk about that one quickly. So the automation. Because like I asked the question, anyone have the VDI technology plans? So seems like no one actually has any of those technologies planned. So I'm going to ask the question from you all because I got a couple of kids. Now I mentioned each of these RDS technologies, the communication protocol what really matters. So there are 3 vendors, 3 protocols I mentioned. So can I know this question? Let me try to make it tricky. So yeah, tricky. What is the VMware one's protocol they are using? Raise the hand please, then I'll ask the question from them. For the VMware also they have a technology called VMware View. Here I am in the Microsoft session asking VMware questions. So let me know if anyone ever got for the VMware View, what is the protocol they use to communicate from the client end to the server side. So anyone ever got that protocol? Okay. So then I'll drop it. So I'll come back to the Microsoft side then. The question is, on the Microsoft, basically we also have a communication protocol with the client end and server side for this application publishing. But we did some enhancement for the 3D and graphic intensive. Let's assume that we put a scenario. Because I didn't mention that one in my in my presentation, so I'm going to ask just to check whether you all know that one. From the client end, I'm going to access the server, and the application over here running is, let's assume, a movie. Or it might be related to 3D. So normally our access protocol is RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, and VoIP is what VMware using. Citrix, I think, I can't remember which called IC something, but they changed it to HDX technology. So for run the 3D, we have done some enhancement for RDP protocol. Now after that one, we give a different name for that protocol or technology. Anyone aware about that one? Just raise the hand. To deliver the 3D technology for these from server side to client side on top of RDP, we have done an enhancement. Anyone has idea about what that enhancement is?
Yeah, remote FX.
Yes, remote FX. Got it. So I got 2 more. So it's out of the session actually. I asked the question just to see how far you really keen about this technology. Okay, the next one would be like it's an easy question. When we are designing a VDI technology, there are 3 aspects normally we need to look at it carefully, evaluate, or let's say do the consultation properly to make sure your VDI project is successful. So this is technical angle. So I just need to know there are 3 technologies I mentioned, areas we need to look at it to do a design of proper VDI. So just raise the hand who knows at least 2 of them, which I mentioned. That I give you the leadership first. Yeah, if I can get at least 2. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, correct. Because those are very much important. I got 1 more question then, 1 more to give away. So, in order to actually, before we publish the VDI, we have to create a master image. We call golden image, right? We mentioned golden image. So to make sure golden image to be ready to be published for this end users, we need to do a particular task. And I need to know what is that particular task. Again, raise your hand. Yeah. No, cleanup process is something I mentioned additionally. In the proper stage, there's one way. Just I have to ask him to give that raise hand. Yeah, this is correct. Easy one. Because the script cleanup is something I mentioned additionally, because no one is telling in the market, even in the consultant stage, that particular task. Even I got to learn it from a premium field engineer in Microsoft. When I questioned him about this particular task, he only mentioned. So he's the only person who has done a script. Otherwise, each person who comes with media technology, they will tell each user to do something like that. Go for this cleanup and try to do deep fragment. That's all. They never tell you exactly everything the task that you need to do. So the guys who do it every day will know what is to be done. But giving that list is not something happen automatically or by anyone by default. So what I'm really trying to show you, that's why I said I'm going to give you kind of like a gift. If you're really going for this one, it's a script. So go for the IT Pro. I really assume most of you might be familiar with the site. If not, I will give the URL again. So I think some of you might not familiar with the URL. Just keep this on handy. So I think it's very much easier to find it out. Just type IT Pro SL on the Facebook group. Because everything that as Janaka mentioned, whatever we present, the presentation files and the additional questions, the utilities, what we find, everything will be on this site. So make sure like you will be visiting and keeping membership. And because sometimes like we will be sending an email every time these sessions are going, I find it very difficult because there are 3,000 emails. When I try to send it, it always goes to spam now, and my IP gets blocked. So we try to use the social media. Facebook is one, and the other one is the Twitter account. So Twitter account I have already published. So go for the Facebook account, and then you will publish everything over here. So any other questions? Because typically I really don't expect questions. In Sri Lanka, we normally after the session only question comes. That's the Sri Lankan method. So saying that, thank you very much. Actually taking your valuable time and coming over here. I really hope the IT Pro Forum that you really learn something. And the other thing is I really mentioned, because we have Facebook group, please make sure like we will be next time we will be suggesting you the session topics 4 or 5. Give us the priority, which topics you really want to see. Based on that, we will be actually selecting those topics. Because like normally what happens is we select the topics, what we really think is the best for you all.